Welcome to the Soul Star Podcast with your spiritual besties, Alli and Mandy. We're here to make your spiritual journey fun, relatable, and inspiring. So let's raise your vibe and ignite your soul together.
Thanks everybody for joining us again for another week. We are super excited to introduce you to another special guest. Have Jannine MacKinnon joining us. She is a sex, love, and relationship coach. And we are just super excited to hear what she has to say, what she has to share. We actually met Jannine at an event before the holidays and had some fun, beautiful, aligned conversations, and we're very excited to have her on the podcast. So welcome, Jannine.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. As you touched on with our conversation in the fall, it was so much fun just chatting with you, and I'm excited to see what unfolds for us here today.
Yay! I'm so excited.
So Alli's like giddy, like a little bit like excited for this conversation.
I've always been super curious, super sex positive. My whole life, I've always like felt this as a young person, even where I'm like, there shouldn't be any shame with this. Like it was always something within me that I've constantly stuck by, and like openly talked about my whole life, and just made it this very comfortable thing. And so and I just found like, obviously the older I've gotten, the more I opened up to that or haven't hidden from that side of myself. So when we bumped into Jannine, it was just like, oh my gosh, like I love this. So this type of conversation is right up my alley. And what we're going to kind of talk about, because it's kind of come into my awareness recently, is sex magic. So cool. So cool. But before we do that, don't let me get ahead of myself. So first, we always like to ask, and curious, like what brought you to where you are now and working in this type of industry?
Yeah, a lot of your story actually resonates with me quite a bit. I was very promiscuous in my teenage years and younger 20s, but myself is very like sex positive and enjoying sex. And at the same time, in hindsight, looking back for me, it was really a lot about seeking validation in the wrong places. And it wasn't as empowered as it is now. And I kind of thought it was at the time, but it's interesting how as we get older in my 30s with the family, I see that time in my life a bit differently.
Yeah.
And so I was very promiscuous, party girl, and then met my husband. Got married, had 2 kids, a year and a half apart. It was like bang, bang, bang. Lost myself in motherhood. It felt like my body was not my own anymore. And I felt like very disconnected in my marriage. And so I set out to reclaim this new version of myself. And so I actually tried a clit sucker vibrator for the first time ever. That was like part of my journey with being sex positive, wanting to bring this back in my life. That's what started it. And that led me down the path through weekly date nights with like journaling and meditation, a bit of self-pleasure, and opened me up to sacred sexuality and like the whole realm there is to play with, because I see it as a spectrum of like masturbation and very like climax orientated sex to slow pleasure to sacred sexuality. And it's like this big buffet of different things we get to play with and feel empowered with. And for me, it was really feeling that shift between sex as something with a partner and for validation as like my sexual energy is for me. And it's something that fuels my radiance and my magnetism. And I get this deep connection with my husband. We have so much fun together in a passionate marriage after 10 years of being together. And I get to do things like sex magic and feel the range of my emotions, because sensuality really is being in touch with your senses and with your emotions. So the more we can play within that to feel it all, the more we can experience more pleasure and get into those waves and that more sacredness, altered states of consciousness. So that was kind of like a little bit of my journey.
I love
Yeah.
So cool.
I
I
love
love
that
that
as
journey.
well, and I love that like as you're explaining like sacred sex and pleasure and all that, the way that your voice changed and the vibration from which we were receiving it, just like it became very passionate and very supportive and nurturing. So it was really interesting to recognize or witness you in your like just even explaining it and sharing about it, like how like you embody that. That's amazing. Well done.
Thank you. And that's like years ago, I would have never thought I'm doing what I'm doing now, but it found me and I saw how much it shifted for me and that I'm created to help other people in this way.
Mhm.
I love
So that would be like your sex coach part of that. Like before we get into the sex magic part, can we talk a little bit about what a sex coach is?
Sure.
Or
So
relationship coach. My bad.
it's all the things. It's all good. I change my name quite often because it's like, oh, it can be all these different things. And I'm a certified sex, love, and relationship coach. I sometimes call myself a confidence and sexual empowerment coach as well. And really, I'm a champion for long term conscious relationships and sacred sexuality. And so I help women who there's kind of two camps. There's one camp that I think is very aligned with you, Allie, who like knows there's more to sex out there, has had fun with it, and like, how do I access this more? Like,
Yeah.
show me how this sounds fun. I know I
Yeah.
want to experience this. And then there's another camp who is really lost touch with their libido. Perhaps they have a lot of shame. There's a lot of religious shame around sexuality that I see with my clients, and they don't want to feel that anymore. They want to let go of that shit and to
Mm.
just really feel good in themselves, to feel sexually empowered and not feel terrible for that because it really is. It's an innate part of us. It's how we're all created. It's
Yeah.
how we could create life, how why our kids are here. And so that's not something to feel shame for. So I kind of help both those camps to what I like to say is come back home to
Mm.
themselves because it's this religious shaming, these societal and cultural norms that have put on these layers that have suppressed this part of us.
Yeah.
That's just innately there. And so
Yeah.
some of us were able to access it more freely while others have more of those layers that have been placed on top of them. So I help peel back the layers and shine the light on what's already there within these women so they can tap into their power and feel really good feeling the pleasure, the sensations, the emotions. And for me, it's really about the ripple effect. Like it is so much fun, all of the stuff we get to do in sacred sexuality in the bedroom.
Yeah.
And now when I go for a walk down Whiff and Spit and Souk with my family, I can pause and just be like overwhelmed by the pleasure that comes through watching the grass waving in the
Mhm.
wind. And we actually saw an orca just the other weekend, and like how much I could feel just in that experience, the exhilaration running and seeing it, and the joy with my family. I've been able to expand my capacity to feel all of that because of my work in sacred sexuality and expanding my pleasure capacity. So it has this beautiful ripple effect that makes it really special.
Mm. I love that because that's kind of what happens. I mean, it's just like another avenue to expand that awareness and that perspective and that ability to sense. We do that through intuitive development. You do it through
Mhm.
sacred sexuality, but imagine like putting those two together.
I
Mhm.
know. I know. Well, and I think that there's obviously that link of like intuition and accessing that part and sex magic, right? Like
Mhm.
it's all kind of connected, and I do see and believe like women like we're very powerful, especially when we are connected to that part of ourselves. And I think that's been strategically um, muted and stifled over the decades because of how powerful I think women are. And so it's like if we connect back to that part of ourselves, it's kind of it can disrupt maybe some of the higher ups or the norms because you know we're confident, we're stepping into our power, and I have felt that. I have felt that this past year. Yeah, crazy.
Absolutely. They really are so hand in hand. And I think with the intuitive development and tapping into sacred sexuality, it really comes down to trusting your body and
Mm-hmm.
trusting yourself. And all those little nudges and intuitive hits we get to just follow that, to follow our curiosities and desires and trust in ourselves in that.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. Well, and I also like wonder because you talk about like societal and like religious, and we have all these layers that kind of like piled on top of us to feel shame. And I think a lot of us don't even know where to access that. Like it's not like it was a conscious thought, or maybe it wasn't something that you thought of like in your family. Like you can't pinpoint to be like, oh yeah, like I came from a really religious family. So like, no, like some of us, it's just there. And that's generational. Nothing really stands out. And I would also say past lives, because, we've done readings and healings for people who have come and said, like, I'm struggling. I could just really struggle sexually. And then have gone and viewed a past life where, and most like past lives, somebody has experienced sexual trauma in that past life. And so like having those soul imprints, like, so it's like so many layers that we don't even know is there, right? We don't know that it's there. So I think even the sex positive people, because I'd even say myself, the even though it's like I've always felt this, and but I have also felt shame. Like, you kind of say like, even though I've been like, no, there shouldn't be. And I've kind of fought for that, even as a teenager when I don't even know where it came from. But there was like this background kind of like shame, like maybe I shouldn't be feeling this way. And so it's even myself where I've recognized from like from where I am now and looking back and being like, oh yeah, I definitely used it. I was curious, but then I was also, it was my insecurities with who I am. And so there's been some dysmorphia placed on, the connection of like, well, they'll like me if I do this type of thing. And like trying to dismantle that at this stage to be like, no, like you're doing this for you and you could enjoy it and it not have anything to do with like your self-worth type of thing. So I love all that. I love what you do. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I could just talk to you forever.
Right. And I feel like so often people come to me for like the mechanics of it. I want to experience the more, or I want to love having sex with my husband again.
Yeah.
And it's without that awareness around all the other layers. So it's like, okay, here's the goal, here's the mechanics. And then it's like, yes, I can get you there. And we got to go through all of this first. And that's where I feel like I really differ, is I think of myself as a holistic approach to sex, love, and relationships, because you can get the toys, the new positions, the lingerie, and it might be a quick dopamine hit, and those can be fun, and they have a time and a place, and you end up back at square one almost every single time. And so that's where taking the holistic approach, looking at the inner child healing, looking at the shadow work, looking at the slut shaming, the religious shaming, the insecurities, the anxious and avoidant attachment styles, and all of those different things, peeling back those layers so you can really come to yourself. I feel like there's a process of understanding, then acceptance, then loving, and embracing. And so to be able to go through that over all of these different layers that we've experienced, that's how we really create that foundation of love, safety, and belonging within ourselves. And so from that foundation, we can then expand our pleasure capacity. Then having the different holistic sex tools like breath, sound, movement can expand us so much more with how much pleasure we can feel.
Yeah.
But that's capped based on what we do with the other inner work.
Yeah. The healing of it. And I think you really like, you touch on something that a lot of women deal with. And it's, we do lose ourselves. Women can really struggle with, I guess being intimate with a long-term partner. It's like it feels like for men at the front of their mind, and for women at back. And so when you have, it's really hard to kind of bring that in alignment so that you're kind of like, well, I need this, but they're like, I'm just ready. You know, and I think that's where a lot of women struggle with that part of it. And we think that we're broken, you know. I know
Mhm.
for a long time I was like, maybe I'm just broken. Maybe I don't know, like I just don't think about it. This is when I was in my marriage, and so I think like this is so beautiful for women to kind of like, because it's stressful too. Like I think as a
Mhm.
female and in a long term, you feel a lot of guilt for
Mhm.
not feeling like you want to. You feel stress of being like, oh my, I know many times I'd be like, oh God, it's been so long. And then it's just like this thing that I'd be like, okay, you need to do it and you need to get yourself right. Like it's terrible. It's awful. And so, and I would remember like thinking, oh, I wish I could just like want it the way they want it, or I wish I could just be more like this because it make things so much easier, right?
Mhm.
Instead of like forcing it. So that's kind of like what you're calling in. And I just curious, like for yourself and your husband, because obviously you started taking a different approach when it
Mhm.
came to sex and how he was open to it, because it sounds like there's a different approaches. Like, I hear about
Contra, yeah.
tantra. Yeah. And all of these kind of things. And I'm like, oh, I wonder how, if a man hasn't really been in that realm, how open of like introducing these things, like how
Mm.
that was for you.
Great question. And I will also just speak to kind of that guilt and that brokenness that so many women feel. And I feel like it becomes this dark cloud that just hangs over us. And that like countdown goes, it's been so long and feeling like we need to, and more pressure. And it's this dark cloud.
Yeah.
And so, what I really provide is this relief, just being able to exhale and let go of that dark cloud. And that's from looking at sexuality as that more holistic thing. It's so focused on the sex, but I like to say foreplay starts with coffee in the morning. All of the components that go into sex happen far outside the bedroom. And often when we're focused on the sex, we need to have sex. It's been this long. I should want to, this and that. We're missing what really lays the groundwork for us. And that's where that focus needs to be. And when we work on our support and connection and playfulness and communication,
Mhm.
the sex naturally happens.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to relationships, like I have a trades guy husband. He's a guy's meat and potatoes kind of guy. He is not into all the woo stuff that I'm in, although over the years he's opened up more and
Okay.
more through having conversations. But I think it really starts with us. And that's why I work with women primarily, because I feel like we are the leaders in this realm.
Mm.
And through a regular practice with ourselves, that's where we're again able to expand our pleasure capacity, create that safety within ourselves. And then that translates into the bedroom. And you don't need to do these tantric experiences sitting in yab yum, which is like cross-legged in each other,
Yeah.
hard breathing, staring in each other's eyes for like 20 or 30 minutes, and then moving on to these other tantric pieces. We don't have to do that.
No? Okay,
Yes,
good.
you can. You
Yeah.
can have amazing experiences doing that. And there's an approachable way that just your average marriage or relationship with kids can still play within sacred sexuality. And for me, it really comes from that deep connection with each other. And so there's that safety side of things. It's using tools just like breath, sound, and movement. Those are kind of like basics of holistic sex tools that I use. And so that's something like Yoni breathing as a personal practice, just breathing into your Yoni, building that mind body connection with that space, training your presence into your sensations. So as you breathe in, feeling the sensations and sounding out whatever intuitively and naturally comes. And so just a practice of doing that. I have a recording for it in my Unapologetic Practices collection. That's going to translate into your partnered experiences. So often, as you touched on, guys can be ready to go whenever. It takes
Yep.
us a bit of time. And so doing your own kind of version of that in your partnered experiences while you're doing that foreplay, warming each other up. I always say you got to touch from the outside edges inwards, starting from the arms, not just going right to the genitals. Like, for me,
No.
fuck up.
Get out of
Like, that is
here.
the opposite
Yeah.
reaction you want to pull out of me.
Totally.
So learning those mechanics, and then also like, okay, as we're getting into it, I can just focus and breathe and
Mhm.
feel the sensations. And then we're going to experience deeper pleasure together. And that's where I find we lead and they begin to come with us. And so the more I can be present in the experience and the more safe I feel, sighing and sounding and moving my body in certain ways, he feels more comfortable to do that too. And then you
Okay.
notice he'll begin to have different sighs and sounds that naturally come up for him, and it kind of perpetuates, and you pull each other along with each other, and you have these more expansive experiences. And through learning our bodies with self-pleasure practices, we begin to know exactly what we like, how we want to experience pleasure, and then we can communicate that with our partners. And they
Yeah.
generally, when you look at most feminine masculine dynamics, they want too good for us. They want to please us. They want to do a good job. They're very action orientated, and just sometimes they need the tools for that. They don't know how. And half the time women don't know how. So how are they going to
So true.
teach their husbands what to do when they don't know what to do? So
No.
starting with us and that self-pleasure practice, we tend to just kind of go side by side together, and we don't have to go into the big rituals. My sex magic rituals are personal. And at the same time, there's little things we can do when it comes to orgasms. For most people, it's a quick little burst, poof, energy gone, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what we can do, just from having this relationship with our body and our energy, rather than poof gone, hold that energy within you. So
Mhm.
even after having an orgasm with your partner and you're kind of done lying there, whatever it is, breathe, swirl that energy throughout your body, nourishing every little corner, your bones, your blood, and your cells. And that, for me, you're using your sexual energy in this personal way. And that's how you get your radiance and your magnetism. It's our life force energy. And so that's a sacred sexuality piece we can bring into our partnered experiences without getting into this like tantric out there things, right?
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Will you tell us about sex magic?
Yeah. Like, what is it? Let's just start with that. Like,
Yeah.
what is sex magic?
Yes. So sex magic is essentially using your sexual energy for manifestation. So to break that down, our sexual energy is our life force creation energy. And so, yes, it's used to create life. It's that potent, incredible creation energy that, yes, creates life and can create anything. It's our creativity. And that's one great side effect I love about working within sacred sexuality. It tends to unlock your creativity at the same time, which is really cool to witness. It's like later clients will be like, "Oh, I just started doing art again and dancing." I'm like, "Oh, I knew it was gonna happen." Like, yay.
Oh, I love that.
And so through a sex magic practice, it has a few different components. And I have a master class that goes really in depth in this process. But you're essentially anchoring yourself in on what you want to manifest.
Okay.
Anchoring it in through the full 5 senses. And so you are firing all different areas of your brain. You're fully opening up your nervous system with these full 5 senses experience of your manifestation. And then you're amplifying your pleasure. And so again, that's opening yourself up to this incredible degree. And then as you amplify your pleasure, you move it through your chakras all the way up to your peak climax, or it doesn't have to be a full climax, and you shoot your manifestation into the universe like a beacon of light. This is like the most potent creation energy you are shooting out. And then you slowly feel the blessings of the universe coming back down, cementing your manifestation into the 3D world. Now, this can be done in a full hour-long ritual, which I probably do like about once a month. And it can be done through quickie, small, 10-minute each morning kind of practices. You can do full self-pleasure, yoni wands, oils, all the things. And you can do close on using your breath, circulating your energy, and anchoring in that manifestation. So it can look like a lot of different things, but at its essence, it's using your sexual energy to manifest.
Wow. That's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah. What have you manifested using sex magic?
I have manifested a tattoo, which is like my craziest one. This tattoo here, for those that can see the video, I
Yeah.
won on a giveaway. I saw the Instagram post pop up days after I did the sex magic practice, just kind of picturing these different tattoos that I wanted. And I won. Like, those tattoo giveaway posts have thousands of people entering. Like, I never really think I'm going to win. And this one popped up days after that practice. I was like, oh, isn't that synchronistic? Okay, let's do it. And I won. So that was incredible.
Wow.
Like,
God, I love that.
yeah, I've manifested sales for online products I hadn't sold in months, popped up hours later. I manifested a new house that came way too soon and everything was lining up, and I had to actually pump the brakes and be like, I don't think we're actually ready for this yet. So it's powerful. And so you need to be very aware of what you're calling in. You need to be very aware of your energetic state. It's not something to play around with if you're feeling blah or kind of depressed or not in it, because you're bringing that energy into things. For the full processes I move through, we always check, is this aligned for the highest good and greatest truth of the universe? Because that's very important either, because sure, you can take this to more of a Black Witch side of things if you wanted to, but it's very important to me we have a clear space and a good and true intention for what we are wanting to call it.
Yeah. I was wondering about that because I could feel that, well, with anything, there's polarity. And so I could feel that this has been used in the past as like dark magic.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, like, and I think also in like how sex in general in society, like we've been made to feel like shameful and stuff. So the first instinct of hearing sex magic, it can easily go to like, oh, you're being manipulative. You're, like that darker side. So I like that you brought that up, because I think with anything, you can use anything for good or for bad. So like, how do you make sure you're doing and staying above the line energetically with that? That's interesting.
Yeah, as with anything, it can go either way, and you can absolutely do dark things. So with that ritual, it's powerful. And so it's just being really aware of those things and making sure things are true for you.
Yeah. Is it always solo work?
So you can absolutely do it with a partner as well. It doesn't need to be solo.
Okay.
But again, like with my husband, if I asked him, he would do it. He's always there supporting me for whatever it is.
It's like, sure, no problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Willing participant.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Ready. Man, they're just so lucky, aren't they? They're just like, ready all the time.
You want me to do what?
No, and we like need the whole like, okay, well, I'm not ready. So you get to do all the work beforehand. Oh, yeah. But it's usually, I guess, like, it's kind of, yeah, I could see that, because I think like with a partner, you can get lost in the connection in that sense. Like, because I was kind of thinking of that being like, I'm not sure if I was like in that connection and we're extreme, if I would be able to focus enough on that part of it. So I could see where on your own, it's easier to do.
Yeah, that's where it really is a practice. And when
Yeah.
I recommend everyone have that self-pleasure practice, that's kind of your lab to play around with
Mm.
these things. And then you can bring it into your partnered experiences. And if you think about it, when two of you are doing this together, that's
Uh,
massive in
That
terms
was
of
my
the
next
energy.
my question was like talking about like self-pleasure, doing your own ritual for your own sex magic, but then doing it in a partner relationship or with a partner, like could you imagine the potency of manifesting sexual through sex magic as partners, like together? Like that would just be a combination. But then I was like, well, can guys use sex magic if they, because you talk about like the energy swirling into your, they don't have a yoni.
No, but they have a lingam, right? We all
What's it
have the
called?
same lingam. Yeah, so these are
Lingam.
Sanskrit terminology
Okay.
that really encases the full area. So lingam, it's the scrotum and the shaft. Yoni, it's the vulva, the vaginal canal, the ovaries. And so just a fun fact for you, vagina means sheath for a sword. That's what it's
Oh.
rooted in. So we're literally calling our
Sheath for a
vaginas
sword.
the space for a penis to go in.
Oh
So
my
I
God.
prefer yoni. That means sacred womb space.
I
And
prefer
encompasses
yoni
all
too.
of it.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
How patriarchal. I cannot say that word, but that's a very patriarchal type of word. You
So
like
that's not the
vagina.
vibe.
But that's not the vibe.
That is not the vibe.
But guys absolutely can do it. It's just with their lingam rather than their yoni. And so it's still moving through the same chakra system. And so again, it just gets a bit more complicated because as I touched on, you need to make sure you're in a certain kind of energetic space. And so for them, you need to be at a space where you're willing and your partner is willing to learn how to move their energy through their bodies. And then when you get to that space, as you touched on, the potency of that of both of you is just incredible. And I've heard of people manifesting vacations and homes and so many different things by doing this with their partners.
So they have to manifest the same thing.
Yes, the same
Agree
thing.
about it.
The shared
Before
vision.
you go in.
Yeah,
You're like,
shared
okay,
vision.
we're not manifesting TV. We're manifesting vacation.
We're manifesting acreage, okay?
Acreage, like, come on. Yeah, get your priorities straight. That'll be an argument in itself.
We're manifesting the lottery first so that we can buy the
We
acreage.
can buy the TV and the acreage. I know.
There's strategy to this.
There's strategy. And like, and you're like, hey, listening to me? This is what we're doing, buddy. And maybe this is more common than I think, but two people were climaxing at the same time. That's not been a common for me. Okay. So I was like, is that?
So that's where it gets tricky, right?
Yeah.
Because when you're on your own, you can feel what's going on when, and it's just a little bit tougher together, and it's totally doable. But it takes that communication. It takes the practice. Like you're not going to hit it out of the park the first time you do this, right?
You'd be like, you went too soon. And then you're like, why are you taking so long? And you're like, that's the pressure.
Exactly. So it's just kind of having cues like which chakra are we moving it up? And kind of maybe we'll just say it together. Sacral, stay there for a while. Solar plexus. And then when you're on the same page as you're moving the energy up through your body, then you can try to climax together. And again, it's not going to happen automatically. You're not going to be great at this right away, and it's possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very interesting.
It's
kinda like-
Mandy.
It's kind of like, well, when you talk about moving the energy up from like the yoni and then through the solar plexus and the heart and the like all the chakras, it's kind of like the crown chakra is like the climax part, right?
Exactly.
The
Which is
farthest
interesting.
thing away from your yoni.
Yeah.
And so it's moving that energy, really cleansing each of the energy centers as it goes through. And then shooting it out. And as you get into the longer rituals, you can bring your manifestation and kind of apply it to each of those energy centers with When you're in your solar plexus, you feel empowered and in a leadership
Mhm.
role, creating this manifestation. In your heart, you feel the joy and love and compassion, acceptance that you have in having what you desire, right? And so you move it through each of those, applying it. And so it's
Mhm.
really cleansing that space, aligning you before you're
Mhm.
getting to that crown and connecting with the universe, with spirit, and shooting it out.
Right. So
Interesting.
cool. Yeah.
And you say that you can still, if you don't climax, but you can still use the pleasure
Mhm.
energy, right? It's obviously not going to be as potent, but it's
Mhm.
still like, obviously, because I know there's been many times that I've been with a partner that I just don't
Mhm.
um climax, and but it's like, but I've enjoyed the whole
Yeah.
time. So it's kind of like you utilizing that energy. Okay.
Yeah, that's why I like to say at that moment you're shooting it out, it's your peak sexual energy,
Mm,
whatever that means in that situation and experience. And it has different flavors and qualities to it. And as you said, of course, there's different potency to that
yeah.
energy, but it doesn't mean anything is not right because it's not this. We can
Okay.
still use it in those different ways with those different qualities.
What are you
Yeah,
going to
like,
manifest, Allison?
mm.
Oh, wow, so many things. So that I've got a laundry list. It's like it's just endless. And like, and it's funny because like we've talked about manifesting a while ago, and there's like this part of me in my head where I get stuck on the fact of like, if something's not meant for you, can you actually manifest it? Like, so like if it's like, if let's just go with the easiest one that everybody's like, I want to manifest $1 million, and it's like, and so that's where in my head, because I look at like our, our soul contract, what our soul set out to do in this lifetime, and all of those things, and it's like, if that goes against a soul lesson or your contract or what you're meant to do in this lifetime,
Mhm.
um, is it something you can break through and override anyways? Like I just always kind of like struggle with that. So I'm like, yeah, I could sit there and be like, oh, I want to manifest this and this and this and this, but it's like, if it's not meant for me, then it's just not gonna happen.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I like to think of it, it's that co-creation aspect. Say we want to manifest all this money, but like we're not ready for it. Perhaps some people manifest the money and then they lose it all right away,
Oh,
right? And so
oh, yeah.
there's those
So you
lessons with
manifested it, but
it,
then
and then
yeah.
it goes. And so there is a lot more depth to it of like, what do you want? Why do you want it? Is it ego based? How does this apply to your life? How will it affect your life having it? Okay,
Yeah.
what resistances are in the way?
Yeah.
Exploring those resistances, releasing it. So that's where like the sex magic is kind of the tips and tricks. And there's all this inner work that paves the path to have a more potent experience in that. So releasing some of those resistances. Then at the same time, you can take things a step further with creating action steps afterwards. So you go through the resistances, you feel into this version of you that has it. Okay, what are internal and external steps you can do to support you in the manifestation? You go through the process, check in with yourself again. What are these? Okay, commit to doing those internal and external steps afterwards before your next practice and continuing to build onto that. And so I say internal and external because a lot of focus is on the external action steps. I want to make money. I'm going to put out an offer, sell that offer, work on my sales page, whatever it might be, right?
Yeah.
And the internal, what are your money beliefs? How often are you actually checking in on your bank account? What would you do with that money? Do you have scarcity mindset? Do you have family traumas around wealth and abundance? And so working through that as well is just as important as those external action steps.
Yeah. And that makes sense because I do think, yeah, because I was thinking that, like sit
Mhm.
there and I think that would be part of mine where it's like, okay, manifesting abundance, but then I also know that there's these sneaky little blocks or limiting beliefs like the scars. Did I say that?
Scarcity.
Scarcity. I always was scarcity. And like just those little like they figure it out at the back, and they're just it's always like if I'm manifesting it, and then the back it's like, is that really gonna happen? Like is that little voice? So that's so true in the sense because you can't just like do it if you also have that energy that doesn't fully believe that you can do it or deserve it. I guess in that sense too. Yeah, so that's interesting.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
want to add in there too, like that conversation is a lot of, we've done a lot of readings for a lot of people, and quite often we'll see that people are working through these sorts of limiting beliefs and patterns and starting the healing in this lifetime. But it doesn't mean that they're ending the healing or they're healing it in this lifetime. So a lot of us are here to do a lot of this work, to do a lot of the healing, but some of us will continue to, like, it's just like the first step to the healing. Like this lifetime is like that pivotal lifetime where we're like, shifting into a more flowy experience in our human lives. So we're starting all of this healing work and it's coming to our awareness now.
Yeah, but maybe not concluding.
Yeah, it'll be continued.
Dang it.
To be continued. But not for everybody. Not for everybody. Like for me, for example, like with the sex magic and the sexual like shame and all that, like I'm on the other side of the spectrum of Allison, where I have shame, but I don't know where it comes from. So I hold that and it shows up in my marriage and all that sort of stuff. So I know that's something that I need to work on and I'm working on in this lifetime. It's brought to my awareness for a reason, but I don't necessarily know or feel like I'll be able to heal it fully in this lifetime. Do you know what I mean?
Like this lifetime, it's that awareness.
Yeah.
It's doing some of the work, doing some of the releasing. And yes, you can make leaps and experience some of this pleasure, but perhaps it's next lifetime. It's embodying more of that like sex priestess and feeling fully safe in that wild woman.
Exactly.
And it does take time and really trusting the process.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
gonna show up as Jannine next time.
I know.
Your next, if you do your cards right, you're gonna be doing this.
Yeah, you never know. And I have had come up in different practices and sessions where there are those witch wounds from past lifetimes where I was burned at the stake and different things for these types of practices.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't safe. Yeah.
No.
And we see the witch wound many times, whether it was, sexuality and being over sexual or sex positive or, the other sides of, alternative ways of living and stuff like that. So it's a lot of us carry that within our kind of like blueprint,
Yeah.
So
So it's
feeling
been
safe.
a big thing for me is feeling safe not only for myself but for my family in doing this work. I had a lot of block for a health trade show I had a few weekends ago and I was just like, I'd just rather be at home with my family. This is so much work. I don't really feel like doing this. Even though I signed up, I was excited. And I worked through it in a session. It was like, I am worried that me being in my fullness, talking about sex, love, and relationships is going to have negative consequences for my family. And it'll limit them in their friends or school activities or have some sort of negative repercussion on them for me being in my fullness. So it's being able to work through all those things that comes up in these really sneaky ways.
Yeah, that's layered.
Yeah. That's true for anybody that does our type of work too.
Yeah.
Like I absolutely felt like that with when we started sharing on social media and our podcast started. And, I was quite worried about how my kids, like how their friends would, if they would come across our podcast or our Instagram and would they get teased and your mom's crazy and all that sort of stuff. So, and it, there's a component of that not feeling safe to fully because of how it might affect. But that totally ties back to the witch wound.
Yeah. And I think it will continue to kind of like pop up, as much as the more like I know for both of us and, coming out of the spiritual closet more and more, I wouldn't even say I'm fully out. But I've had moments where like, cause I, open with my kids about what I do and all of that. And you have these like, where else they tell their friends. And then you're like, oh, well, I don't want to say it's a secret because it's not a secret. But then I also like, you sit there and worry to be like, oh, not everybody's open to this. And I remember like having my youngest, he had friends over, and I had dowsing rods at that point, and I was using those dowsing rods with my boys and just kind of showing them, just like, it's like these little practices to give them awareness, but it's like not over their head type of thing. And
Mhm.
he wanted to bring it out to show his friends and to ask questions. And so of course it was like that. Okay. Because again, I don't want to make it just like sex. Like I make sex very like conversations about sex with my kids. I just make it super normalized because I don't want there to be any type of like, we don't talk about that. So it's the same with intuition and spirituality. And I remember thinking afterwards, like, oh shoot, they're gonna go home and they're gonna say, oh my God, we're using these tools, and they said that we're gonna be in the same class together, and we're gonna like our teachers, and I just remember like waiting and being like, am I gonna get a text message, or am I gonna see these parents kind of pull their kids away, and all of a sudden it's like, no, they can't hang out. Like it's
Mhm.
a true like, yeah, like it's a possibility, you know? Yeah, it's a scary,
Mhm.
yeah, that we have to work through ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I wondered, Jannine, if you ever work. Well, I'm sure these goddesses are working with you, whether you know it or not.
Mm.
Do you work intentionally with any of the sexuality, like the very feminine goddesses like Aphrodite or Freya or who's the other one? Venus.
Great question. So,
Mhm.
sacred sexuality for me is really what's opened me up to spirituality. I grew up very non-religious in any sort of way, and so it's really been my catalyst of working with different energies and spirit guides. And so it is somewhat newer for me, where it's been an unfolding over the last 3 years in terms of spirits, more specifically compared to other things and different guides. And for me, I do call in certain spirit guides, and I'm not fully sure exactly what their names are. That's kind of a relationship I've been building.
Mhm.
But I have a masculine counterpart, excuse me, and who I call Luna. And I'm not sure exactly what she is. She takes on different forms. But for me, that energy that I work with is its sexuality, its love, and its darkness and emotion, and that willingness to feel the sadness and the grief and to be there for children. And also that comes with sexuality and deep connection and relationships too.
Mm, so cool. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, that'd be interesting, like, calling in on those beings and like
Mhm.
exploring that to kind of see what their energy feels like, what they can
Mhm.
teach us, in that
Mhm.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of my intentions for this year is to connect more with my spirit guides and have more clarity around how to actually work with them. Because again, that's
That's what we
newer
do.
for me. I'm like, exactly.
That's
We're
what we do.
connected for a reason.
I know. I know. I
Yeah.
love that.
Because I'd be like, how do you pray? How do you connect
Yeah.
with these people? Because it was so
Yeah.
not a part of my life. I never ever actually saw someone praying
Yeah.
or working with guides or goddesses before. So
Well,
Yeah.
that is the beautiful part of like learning how to connect intentionally. Because when you
Mhm.
learn how to connect to your spirit guide, to pull forward your spirit guide, you can do that with any energy, whether it's a god or goddess, whether it's a past loved one, whether it's anything. So that
Mhm.
would be, yeah, I can't wait for that for you. So
Mhm.
working like pulling forward, setting your space, pulling forward Aphrodite and be like, okay, Aphrodite, what do you got to share with me? What do you want to teach me? How can I make this way or whatever? And then learning directly from that being. So
Yes,
beautiful.
that's what I want.
Yeah. Even
I
like
love that.
Mother Mary and Isis and like the whole divine feminine, spectrum of, you know,
Of the
ascended
goddesses,
masters.
ascended
Yeah. That
masters. What's the scary one?
Kali. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kalima. But then
Kalima.
she's like owning her power,
Yeah.
right? Like,
I'm sure she works with you already based
mhm.
on the conversation that we've already had because I can feel that energy in just owning it. Like that's a full like embodied energy. her energy is very powerful.
Yeah, owning the anger, not
Yeah.
needing to run away from it, but knowing it has a purpose and being able to hold that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can
So
feel the
good.
energy buzzing.
I know.
I love it. It's fun.
Yeah. What other courses do you have? Because you said you have a master class on sex magic. So if anybody's interested in
Signed up.
learning, yeah, Alli's got it. She'll have to let us know. But like, I'm very interested in it too, because you go through different rituals. Because you talked about how there could be like, just like drop like quickies. I like that, quickies, or like hour-long rituals.
Yes.
That one probably has a lot more obviously involved with it and more sacredness, I'd say, holding space for that magic that you're creating. But do you have any other master classes?
So not master classes specifically. So I have the Sex Magic Masterclass on demand. You get lifetime access. So every time I do a live iteration, you're welcome in to join the space. And so that has the education plus the ritual side to it with both the quickie and the longer form ritual. Then I also have Unapologetic Practices collection, which you also got too.
I did.
Yeah. And so that's that's for your self-pleasure space and doing all of this work on your own. There's different recordings uploaded every month. We have a live embodiment journey the last Wednesday of every month that is open by donation to the public and included for those within the collection. And I have a group program that is starting March. It's been on my heart for a long time. It's called Ignite. And so I've ran through many different one-on-one clients through this process. And so I'm ready to make it accessible in that group program container. So I'm really excited for it. And so it's where we do that groundwork, the inner child healing and the shadow work, then get into the holistic sex tools, getting your roadmap for pleasure through all of the different avenues, and then building up to sacred sexuality with the sex magic as well. So there's a bunch of different things, plus coaching. I have a free honeypot meditation. That's a great spot to start. You get the free meditation, which is all about connecting with your sexuality and the ingredients you want it to have, because that's unique for everyone. Some people want sassiness. Some people it's deeply personal and sacred. So it's putting those qualities in and connecting with your sexual organs. So I'll give you the link, and that's a great starting point. You get on the email list, you find out about the podcast, the group programs, all of the different things.
Oh, awesome. And do you want to talk about your podcast quickly?
Sure. So it's Unapologetic with Jannine MacKinnon. And my intention is that it is the go-to space for approachable conversations around sex, love, and relationships as it pertains to conscious long-term relationships and sacred sexuality. So we'll talk about orgasms and anal pleasures. And tomorrow's episode is 3 keys to 33 years of happy marriage, based on a conversation I had with some people at that health trade show I went to, and then how to relate that to sexuality as well. So there's a lot of great nuggets in that space as well.
Oh, I love that.
I love it. I think it's so timely to have you on the podcast and for the work that you're doing for putting it out into the world, because there's so many conversations with women of like our age, in marriages who have lost that spark and are trying to find it again, and just trying to like really understand who they are and reclaim a lot of what they feel like they've lost, or stepping into a new identity or whatever that is. There's just so much shifting and changing happening for us. So it's beautiful, that work that you do. Thank you for sharing that with and supporting all the women that need it.
Thank you. It's such an honor to do this work.
All right. Well, I think that is a great place to wrap it up. Thank you again for joining us, Jannine, and maybe we'll have you on for a part 2. But if anybody's interested in working with Jannine, you can check out all of the links in the show notes, and you can connect with her there. And we'll see you next week.
Thank you.